Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome to the Paranormal Experienced Radio Show with your host, Kat Hobson. We are here to learn all we can about every type of experience within the paranormal. There will be interviews with seasoned investigators of the spiritual realm, including ufologists, cryptozoologists, psychics, mediums, authors, and creators of technology, and others with credible knowledge to share. Together, we will find out what brought these investigators of the unknown into the field and learn what keeps them working so hard in it. I'm interested in learning how these individuals go about their work, and I believe you are too. This program is all about bringing those who are in the field together with our listeners who are interested in what they find. For us, the paranormal is all about working with and supporting each other. We're all here seeking answers to the questions that bother us so. Now, let's get those answers. And enjoy the show.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us here tonight. You are listening to Paranormal Experienced Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host. And as I said, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. And I have a terrific show tonight. But before we get to that, I do want to mention that we have a couple of different sites and businesses who support us. And I just want to return the favor. We have Sixth Sense Media, which is Dennis Nappy and Ray Davis and other contributors as well. They're brilliant. They're great people. And Ray is one of the most positive people I know. He does affirmations, and if you follow him on Twitter, you will start your day off with the biggest smile. And you'll have a good outlook for the rest of the day. Kind of like Dustin Perry. I put them kind of on the same par. Also, we have 6 books, The World of the Paranormal. That is Gavin Davies, who is my friend and a terrific author in his own right. And now, he doesn't just do the Paranormal Chronicles. He's publishing actual authors. And if you heard us with Claire a few weeks ago, her book, Raising Faith, was his first book to publish. Of course, he has several more under his belt now, but they are just fantastic. You will enjoy them. And we have other authors coming as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. And I also want to give a shout out to my co-investigator and friend, Ladarius Young. He is Shout Out World Media. And he just needs to get a little extra love here this week. So there you go. Now, I am excited to be hosting this guest. He is a very eclectic person. He's just different from your average bear, right? Jordon Jones is the co-founder of the Oculus Paranormal Team. He is their case manager as well, and he is a lead researcher. He's just fantastic all the way around, and I'm so fortunate to be able to welcome him here. And Jordon, hi.
Hey, Kat. How you doing this evening?
I'm terrific. How are you?
I'm doing quite well.
Terrific. You know, I am so looking forward to this because in general conversation, when we're in a crowd, you're not really reticent, but you're very paced. You, you have all this great information, and I just enjoy talking to you. I actually enjoy listening to you, and I think that's neat. So the main question that I always ask people, even if I already know the answer, because my guests don't, is what brought you into the paranormal? Because you are a martial arts person. Mm-hmm. You also studied political sciences, which I did as well. And did you have something that particularly led you into the paranormal field?
Yes. So when I got into this field, what actually was kind of the draw was I was actually brought to a funeral, which is kind of fits the bill as far as paranormal. So one of my friend's mothers, we were there for one of my friend's brothers that unfortunately passed away of a heroin overdose, and we were there to see him off. And just by happenstance, we were sitting there talking about philosophy and passing on what takes us, where do we go when we cross over. And she said, "Hey, do you think you'd be interested in joining us on investigating?" And I'm like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And she said, "What kind of investigating?" And I was like, "Well, so what type of investigation are you talking about?" And she said, "Oh, paranormal investigating. We're going to Harper's Ferry and looking around and checking out a few of the sites in our area in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia." And I was very taken aback by it. I've always approached the paranormal as a big skeptic, and no one has ever actually come forward so abrupt and forceful with me about, "Hey, do you just want to come along and do a paranormal investigation?" So I thought about it. I sat on it for the longest time, and I finally got an invite to a Facebook private group. So I was inducted to the Skulls effectively. I was brought into a secret society, and so we scheduled a meetup. They were scheduling a meetup at Harper's Ferry at Storr College, which was the first African American college that was brought up to bring ex-slaves back into society, reading, writing, math, all sorts of other, arithmetic, things of that nature. So we brought, I just brought myself, my cell phone, my SLR digital camera. I didn't know what to expect. And they led me around Storr College, and they were showing me the ropes, effectively. It was a combination of just different eclectic people. There was Steve and Stacy. They were the old members, the original co-founders of OPT. And they had been investigating for probably 15, 20 years. So they're old school paranormal investigators. They've got this down. And they brought me along, learning the dowsing rods. They taught me the K2 meters, even the Mel meter. So all these tools I've never interacted with before. Now, to give you a little backstory, I've worked with both the FBI and Department of Defense as an insider threat specialist and research analyst. So I'm
going to stop you right there. What is an insider threat analyst?
So insider threat is analyzing any potential threats. Can it be anything from like Aldrich Ames? You're talking about any of the spies that are in any of the security clearances that own a security clearance. And these people they are analyzed by people that have provided their name and what they might have done to raise suspicion within an organization or an agency or within the military. And so what I have to do is I have to analyze to see if they are a serious enough threat that they would cause any national security issues. So that was the role that I played when I was at Department of Defense. Now, with FBI, I was a research analyst, and I was a target analyst. So I researched individuals, if they were getting a job or if they were applying for citizenship. So all these people that would come across my desk were individuals that I had to check databases to see if they had any record or if they were in any FBI files, so on and so forth. So all of this type of investigating, I had this wealth of knowledge from this career path, but didn't know anything about paranormal investigating. So it was an entirely different type of investigation field.
But you were already a trained investigator. That's really cool.
Yeah, so that is what piqued my interest, because I was always the analyst. I was never the out in the field investigator. I would research what investigators would bring in. So it was sort of neat to know that there were still spirits, there were still entities that had personalities and histories and grudges and quirks about them, just like any normal living person. And this was just researching and investigating a different type of person. So that's what led me to just really appreciate Steve and Stacy bringing me on, starting out my paranormal investigation field. And so we went to the inner city of Harper's Ferry during this investigation. And I was enthralled by all these tools. We did a flashlight session just in the middle of the city, one of the main roads. No one was out. It was completely just a dead city on a Saturday night. And we started getting just responses from different communications with the flashlight sessions. And these flashlights were the turnstile ones. So it wasn't like a push button, but they were just turnstile ones that, if you said spirit, turn the red flashlight on if you want to confirm or deny something. And each and every time when Steve and Stacy were around, these flashlights would respond accordingly. And it started bringing me, and I was like, well, what's causing these flashlights to go off? And so that, even being a somewhat of a skeptic, I walked into this field asking more questions. I was given more questions than answers.
It does that, doesn't it? I mean,
Exactly.
You sit there and you think you've got a handle on, well, if this happens, then I'm going to anticipate this being next.
Right.
So I have had the push buttons function properly.
Okay.
Excuse me. But I also, people are always like, oh, well, the battery swells and this happens and, it's the flashlight trick. And I have had specific flashlights, as you did, respond when I said, okay, this one. Now this one. Because I use red, blue, and black.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Very
really
similar.
interesting to watch that. I do understand that batteries can expand. I also know intelligently that they're not going to expand to the point of being a danger and causing things to go awry with the flashlight in 10 minutes.
Right.
So,
And then on top of that, if you have repeated results, which is what science, if you're going about anything with a scientific approach, that's the reason why when I use my favorite tool of the trade, when I was shown how to use it, was the dowsing rods. because they have a versatility of, if you wanted to say open the rods for yes and bring them together for no, and you could do just the opposite.
Yes.
You could say together for no, for yes, and apart for no. And then the same thing left to right would work the same way. So you have so much versatility with the dowsing rods. Now, skeptics will say that, you are putting unbalance or weight into the rods. I think I remember your last show, you were talking a little bit about dowsing rods, and there was a little bit of effect of that. So the dowsing rods, they do need to be stabilized. I see some people, when they hold dowsing rods, they hold them at an angle.
Yes.
Or they will unconsciously, or I guess you could say subconsciously, they'll move just like all it takes is like one finger, or just like they'll move their knuckles when they're holding the rods, and that can cause a little bit of wiggling of the rod back and forth, and some people think that is picking up some kind of interaction with the spirit. So
that's why it's always good to be videoing when you're utilizing those.
Exactly. Because we also are developing a tool that we're going to be using like a PVC pipe, and it's going to be a standing, almost like a tripod tool, but for dowsing rods, where you can hold the rods, but they actually have levels on each side. So you'll have a level on your left-hand side and your right-hand side, and then a level in the center. And then that's how you can see if the rods are perfectly balanced. And when that happens, it will disprove any disbalance or unbalance of the rods if you're using them to communicate. And I thought that was a really good idea from some of my team members. And this is also from help from my fiance. She threw in the levels for the idea of knowing if dowsing rods were being used unbalanced, and I thought that was kind of neat.
That is kind of neat. Now, is she very involved with what you do paranormally? She
is. Cool. So my fiance, she didn't know how to approach the paranormal, and I know that when I first approached her about it, she was really intrigued by it, but she is the skeptic to my skepticism, if you can believe that. So her approach to everything is she will deep six some of my ideas, or deep six my observations, and say, "Are you sure about that, Jordan?" She'll be my reason to my skepticism. And sometimes people that are super skeptic need someone else, another set of eyes, to basically look at them when they are making observations or conclusions to things. And I think that's necessary in any team. There's a spectrum, there's a balance between the more sensitive, the spiritually sensitive, mediums, sensitives, clairvoyants, clairaudience. And then the other side, there are people that need to have your back, as far as a couple people that can refute or validate it, because they have tested so many they've tested these logical ideas about what you're studying or what you're trying to prove, and there's no way to describe it in a rational way. There's only a paranormal way to describe this. There's no scientific conclusion to this, so you can start going down the paranormal route when you're researching evidence, and I think that's necessary.
I agree. I have a research partner who does that, and it's really funny when something that actually is paranormal occurs around him, because it makes him get funny looks on his face and scratch his head for a while. So it's never boring. But I will say that we are up against our first break already. So we will be back after this. Thank you so much for listening, and our audience. We will be right back with Jordon Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The opinions of hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinion of this network.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Hi there. Welcome back to Paranormal Experience Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, joined tonight by my guest, Jordon Jones. Jordon and I have been having a fun discussion. I hope you're enjoying it. And I didn't even know that he did the stuff with the FBI to the extent that he did. So how about that? I love learning new stuff, Jordon, especially about people that I kind of feel like I have a feel for. But I didn't know that about you.
Secrets are spilling out.
I tell you. Have to be careful with that.
I know you're not going to see me tomorrow, probably. I'll be stolen away.
Well, then I'll have to answer to Lauren for that. So don't let that happen.
I promise.
Okay. So we were talking about dowsing rods and the stability, the stabilizer that you're making for them. I think that is fantastic that you're doing that, and yet that's how new equipment gets developed. You're out in the field, you're doing something, you're like, oh, if this just did that, wouldn't that be so much better? And right. It is.
It's you can either reinvent the wheel, or you can effectively create the wheel. But I want to test it out in the field first. If I'm going to be using this car and using these wheels, I need something that makes sense, that gives me evidence and feedback that I can understand. If I'm using tools, any equipment, paranormal equipment that doesn't make sense to me, or I've tried to study it and learn it, and it's not useful to someone, then ask someone that maybe would be an expert in that particular tool. And if you can't find anyone, don't use it. Use things that are going to work for you. Every team, when people see different paranormal teams use different equipment and they kind of give them the stink eye for using it.
Yes.
Are you actually creating a database? Are you creating evidence, a pool of evidence, not just one investigation that is providing or proving material? And I know that there are some old paranormal heads out there that have done research and have like they keep like the walls like sketched out with a whole bunch of like paperwork and lines, and they're the conspiracy theorists, the ones that have all the information strewn on their walls, and they've got bookshelves and bookshelves.
Yes.
Like I know those people. I haven't reached that level yet. But I'm starting to. I'm trying to learn not to tread on other people's feet because they have already done this study. Your last guest this last Wednesday, was that Tim?
Yes.
Yeah, Tim was mentioning that there are like newer investigators that just follow the golden rules of the paranormal shows and not what investigators have actually used or what techniques or evidence that they've actually studied or researched over before they went on investigations. And I know that there's a lot of teams that say, oh, I am inventing something brand spanking new when there has already been a tool or a study or a theory already out there that they haven't looked for. And the reason why they can't find it is because a lot of paranormal material doesn't get published by like an organized scientific community. There's no, I don't know of any overarching body of research that is shared. That there are people that have like websites set up, but no one is in perfect agreement on how the theories of the paranormal worlds sort of coincide with each other. And I just thought it was interesting, is that if someone wanted to do research on, say, like how electromagnetic, how the milligauss with like the Mel meter or a K2 meter, how do they understand how that is picking up paranormal, like it's basically a field of energy that is being interrupted. And that is something that just, I think it would be very interesting to study in a different context. And that context being, I want to study the paranormal field in a different method, and that is the tactile method. And what tactile means is that the spirits that come into contact with investigators while they're out on the hunt, you can say, they are looking for pictures and they're looking for EVPs and they're looking for things, and those are valid pieces of evidence. But the pictures, people's eyes, unfortunately, are as untrustworthy as their ears.
Well, that's very true.
When people look at a picture, just like when someone listens to an EVP, you can have 3 people listen to the EVP, and then of course all spit out very different statements of what was being said through that EVP. And that's guaranteed because the people's hearing, the decibels that they are able to hear are different for each person. Some people, I'll admit, my fiance, who's tried to listen to some of the EVPs that I've heard, she can't hear certain decibel levels. Whereas one of our co-founders, Tyler, heard really, really very soft, like very high hertz levels when they're listening to EVPs. And me, I'm sort of like right smack dab in the middle. I can hear some things, maybe most things, but not everything. And each person's ability to hear, just like their ability to see, matrixing and, pareidolia, when you look at an image and you try to create something in your mind that makes it look like a person or a figure, that's untrustworthy as far as unless you've got repeated results or evidence to back up that photo or that EVP. Something has to, I think, coincide with it that would help prove the quality of that evidence. And that's why I want something that's hard and true, like physical contact. And that's what tactile is. And what I've been working on is just equipment that shows interaction, like a spirit actually touching things, like just for example, we talked about the flashlights.
Yes.
That's a tactile interaction. That's a spirit physically touching something. And then you have things like paranormal groups back in the 1800s, the Society of Psychical Research. They were a bunch of skeptics, but they tested certain pieces of equipment, something as simple as a ball of twine. They used mothballs and see if it got moved in the middle of a floor. They used light bulbs, just very simplistic tools actually went a long way as opposed to the very highfalutin pieces of equipment. Now, don't get me wrong. I love using my favorite technical piece of paranormal tools is the millimeter. I love using that because that measures the electromagnetic frequencies, which is the milligauss.
Right.
And then also it measures temperature. And there are two reads that coincide with each other. So that shows right there that there is a correlation. If, say, temperature goes down while the electromagnetic frequency goes up, that shows that there's a cold spot or possibly something cold coming through, whereas well as you have a spike in electromagnetic activity.
I have a question for you about that, and I know this is stopping you in mid-thought, but this is something that I have come across, and I know that you're a really good researcher as well as investigator, so I was curious about your take on this. Now, a lot of people correlate cold spots with the spirit being there. Okay. And there's a school of thought also that feels like the energy coming to you would be warm. So if you have a cold spot, then that's the lack of energy that it's moved on. What do you find in your experience with that?
Well, I actually had an interesting experience up in Burkittsville, the famed Blair Witch Project area of Maryland. There's this location called the Purple Church. And me and a couple of the other investigators, the original co-founders, went out there. And supposedly this location in all its lore is a location of demonic worship and rituals and possessions and things of that nature. And when we went over to the Purple Church is boarded up. It's completely closed off, so the interior cannot be accessed. But when I was in the grounds of the Purple Church, just kind of walking around, there's a graveyard located right next to it, I felt extremely warm, like to the point where I felt like I was walking around in a summer day. Right. At the beach. The month that we were investigating was in the middle of February, and it was snowing. It had started to snow, and the only place that we had felt this, and this, like I said, you could say that there might be something underground that might be creating this heat, but in such a large, expansive area. Like, I walked in completely around the entire church, and this was probably about a good 1.5 acres. And it felt like it was burning. I almost felt like I had to take my shirt off and walk around. It was that hot. And that was a very strange experience. So I think the initial pooling of energy is why the energy is cold, but once spirits, I think, become present and they are actually moving about within your vicinity, I think there is changes in warmth. The same thing with the piece of equipment that we use. It's called the Arrow. Mm-hmm. It's the device actually picks up the direction that cold and heat is picked up, if there's an increase in temperature or decrease in temperature. And we've gotten increases and decreases in the middle of rooms where the particular place of investigation didn't have any electricity. And there was heat that rose, and then there was cold that rose. So
That's interesting.
I think it's a fluctuation. I think that the initial pool of energy, like if they're pulling from a light bulb or pulling from a battery in one of your pieces of equipment, it will go cold from what I've experienced. And this is not to say that other investigators have not experienced something different, but my experiences have been cold first, and then I've been in situations where I've walked through areas and I felt an intense heat pass me.
Yes. And I had that happen to me at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, and it just completely took me aback because I had not heard that theory at that point. I could not figure out what was happening.
It's like they're just trying to keep you warm, Kat.
Well, I had put the experience down to the fact that I was wearing a doctor's coat because, trying to role play in the hospital and, get interaction that way.
Interesting.
And we had gone to the nursery, and I just set my equipment down on the rocking chair and was struggling to get out of this coat because I'm sweating like nobody's business, sweating like a man in a boxing match or something. It was terrible. It was so hot.
So you were trying to recreate, say, you were trying to be one of the staff or one of the members at this location to get either a rise or a interaction from some of the spirits.
Yes. And as I was taking off the jacket, the girl that was my investigation partner in that section looked down and said, your K2 meter is going insane. And I looked down and I was like, I'll be right with you. I'm so sorry, but I'm hot. And when you said that, it made me wonder if, because she was obviously already there, the K2 was already active, and insanely active. So was it possible that she was generating that heat?
Well, that's very well could be. If you encountered if there was anyone's batteries, or if there was any source of electricity that had been drained significantly, and then you encountered that heat, that very well could have been.
Interesting.
I'm not sure. Sometimes you catch it by luck or surprise that, like, you look down and it's like, oh, I charged my video camera at 100%, and 20 minutes later it's now down at 2%. Like, things like that. It's not something I don't believe the Earth, like some of the Earth energies just magically pulled power from the encased battery. It's encased in the frame of the battery itself is protected, and you're not going to get such a quick drain of battery unless it was a faulty battery, a faulty piece of equipment that was draining it. So if a spirit had found a light source or a battery, and then it suddenly got cold because it was draining whatever, it was like just sucking up whatever it could, and then as it passed, it went to move. It might have passed by you with that energy, that heat source, and that's what the transference of energy from the charging source, the battery or the light bulb, and then went to the spirit and then past you.
Well, it was hot.
Hot as a summer day.
It was actually, I think, an early fall day, but that still qualifies here for a hot summer day. Okay. So we have interesting weather here.
Well, especially in Alabama, right?
Right. And the Old South Pittsburgh is right across our state line up in Tennessee. So I'm actually doing a live broadcast from there September 13th. That's going to be an awful lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
Right?
What's the place you said?
The Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee.
Okay. Is it still operational or?
It is not, but it has recently been purchased by Ronnie D., who has been bringing it back to life. Basically bringing it back, getting it clean, trying to have operational kind of, not operational, but looking like it did back in the day in the areas that's possible.
Oh, very cool. Is it being turned into more of a reflection of what it once was, or is it just like a historical property?
It's historic. It's a historic property. It's really very active. It's always been very active, but it had gotten to the point where the money that was taken in wasn't being spent on it, and it was being allowed to go derelict. There was so much mold and just grunge, and the volunteers who work with Ronnie and people who love Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, I'm one of them, have been really fighting to bring this thing back. I haven't been able to go, obviously, because of the stupid knee, but it's about done, and I can't wait to see it.
That's awesome. That's definitely up in the territory of the Tennessee Wraith Chasers too.
They love there. They have their own room there.
Oh, they do.
So, they really do. And we are up against a break again. I'm sorry I talked through that, but
no worries.
It is their favorite haunt. They'll tell you that. So we will be back again after this fantastic break. Y'all come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCEC FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, LTD.
and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experience Radio. I'm your host, Kat Hobson, with my guest, Jordon Jones, and we have been talking about all kinds of fun things, from equipment to possible variations in theory to, you name it, locations. Are you having fun, Jordon?
Oh, I'm having a blast.
I am too. So where do you want to go now? Because I talked your ears off about Old South Pittsburgh.
Well, yeah, you're giving me some ideas because honestly, our team has remained in primarily the tri-state area. So Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania. We've dabbled a little bit in DC, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and all that. But we've started drifting a little further out. See, we're kind of we've only started in 2016. Keep in mind, so we're baby-faced, brand new paranormal investigator team. But I would say that the furthest we've been out is New Jersey. We went to the famed Clinton Road, which was the most haunted road in the United States. And we've also been down to Nolens. And that was also...
Nolens.
Correct me if I ever speak incorrectly on that.
Well, that's just pure Southernese. You have to let it just kind of roll right off your tongue.
Good teacher, thank you.
No worries. You're welcome.
So the Clinton Road investigation, me and a few of our team members went on. That was, as we had talked about during the break, it's a road trip. We call a personal investigation. So our team has 3 different categories of investigations. We have a private investigation, which is for specific clients. So our team deals with more on the client end. So majority of our cases, when we get asked to go to investigate, we're either investigating for give clients a peace of mind. We're not necessarily trying to remove demons, as people like to state, but we are trying to figure out who the people that are residing on the property are. So this could be a malevolent or a benevolent human spirit. This could be one of our mediums, who is, you might have met before, is Kelly Miller, the Maven medium.
I have.
And she comes along with a lot of our investigation. She's sort of, call her a team member, but sort of on a contractual basis. She goes out and investigates with a lot of different teams, but she helps us out a lot, and we love her. So she comes out and she experiences what's called elementals, and these are elemental spirits. And she has gone into training.
Those can be freaky.
Yes, because we can't, as living human beings, we have never experienced these things before until we encounter one. We can't wrap our mind around what this thing looks like and how do we interact with it. It's like coming in contact with an alien or
it is.
Or a UFO. It's just so abstract to someone's reason. And so when they see stuff like this, like a water elemental, Kelly has seen a lot of earth elementals. Think of it almost like these weird gremlin-looking creatures that she and a couple of the other sensitives have seen on some of our investigations. They're just there to either watch, or they're there to protect, or some can be a little bit more overly protective, and you could say malevolent to a person walking the property. But
it just kind of seems like that grows with them, depending on their interpretation of your goals.
Exactly. It depends on the energy that you bring to the table. If Kelly has mentioned that she's gone to a couple of our investigations where there's been a lot of earth elementals, and they're almost like they're just watching from the boundaries. They're not necessarily coming in and like getting up in your face. They're sort of like just watching you from a distance and kind of skirting the lines. And I always thought that was kind of just a little unnerving. But she said that they didn't seem to be anything benevolent or malevolent. It was almost like a neutral entity. It's almost like this is the forces, like what elementals are. They're just the forces of nature. They're not taking anyone's side. They're there to protect a property or a land, or maybe a particular spirit that it's bonded with. But besides that, it's a very interesting thing to come across when you do an investigation. Shadows, like I said, also a lot of people think that shadows are inherently evil. Shadows that we've actually picked up on video recordings from a couple of our investigations, those they're just energies that are not human, from what we believe. These shadows, these spirits they're just there to observe, and some of them do interact, and they will. Some people have claimed that they've been attacked by the shadow spirits and so on and so forth. But I think that like elementals and shadow spirits are sort of just the gatekeepers to the paranormal. They're just kind of watching, and they'll step in when they need to, but they're not emotional like human spirits. Like if they have malevolent human spirits that we've interacted with, one of our first investigations, malevolent human spirit, we were getting ready to clear out for the night, and we blessed and cleansed. We did a sage burning throughout the whole house or the whole building, and we're working our way back out of the property towards the front door, and this spirit had slammed its fist, or whatever you want to call it, whatever it's part of its body, against the doorway as we were closing it, and it was like the loudest, like almost like someone punched the door really hard. And I opened the door to see if anything had accidentally fell, and everything was still in its place. So there was nothing that could have fallen over. It didn't sound like anything that fell over that I could see that caused that ruckus, that noise. So we were moving our way out of there pretty quick once that happened. So
did it give you any pause that when you opened the door, did you not think that, oh, I may have just invited something in here with us?
Well, we were saying the blessings, and we were also saging in like right behind me. So as soon as I opened the door to check, I closed the door immediately and then backed behind that line. It's almost, think of it like a defensive line for a king,
Right.
or you protecting a president. It's like, think of it like the Secret Service of the spiritual world. Is you have a couple people when they're doing a cleansing, you're supposed to do the boundaries of the property, and then you work your way back out of a location. So the most turbulent energy, the most negative energy that you find, you start there and you start blessing and doing your cleansing, however, whatever ritual that you perform. And then you work your way back towards the exit. So you have your back facing the exit. And then once you get to the end, with sage cleansing, sage burnings, white sage, well, some people use that technique, and I like using that just to it's to purify the existing energy. It's to push the energy out. There's new energy that can come in. It's not the same as crossing a spirit over, as some people say, and some people believe they can't even cross spirits over. It's like pushing the spirits out for a little bit to give some breathing room on the property and let energy come back in. And that's what I've always seen with cleansings, is that, you know, a negative spirit can always come back.
Yes,
but
they can.
It's based upon the energy. We try to also empower the clients that we work with as well. So we don't just go there and it's like, all right, job's done. We did the cleansing. All right, give us our $250 or something like that. We don't ask for money, obviously, but it's like we talk to the client and we tell them, like, this is your house, this is your property. You have to take ownership of your property, because the property, if you allow someone to come in almost like an intruder or like a nasty roommate, think of it like that. You say, you know, like, I put my blood, sweat, and tears into renovating this place, keeping it clean, keeping it up to snuff, and I don't let it go to ruin. And because of that, you know, I have a right to be here just as much as you. And we tell clients, you know, you might have to share the space with your spirit, but the spirit, if they're going to reside on that property, you know, you got to make them aware that, you know, we're living there, we're a permanent fixture there, and, you know, we got to get along, or we're going to have to call in the heavy guns to bring someone in to push you out, because it's like it's not just one time that we come out to an investigation and do a cleansing. Like, sometimes we'll have to call on specialists like a priest, or call in someone that like a Native American ritualist, you know, someone that can come in and do a blessing. It's depending on the energy of the spirit that it resides at the property as well. You can't go into a property and expect to push out a spirit with a ancient Chinese ritual if the spirit that resides there is a malevolent spirit that is also very highly, you know, a very pronounced Christian.
Yes. You have to match the belief system. Exactly,
which is why when I and a couple of my members do the research on, we actually will look at this database called Landex, and Landex gives us a general idea of who has owned the property going back to a certain period of time. So when we do the research for any property, we look at this Landex database. And unfortunately, it only goes back to the 1960s. So then once you have the deed, the book, and the page number, then you go back further from that, and you have to essentially chase the books and the page numbers of the people that granted the deed to the person before it. And so you chase this rabbit hole, and you eventually have to find yourself at the court office of any given county. And the court office keeps all the records of these properties, which you have to know the lot and the block number of any given property, and you go back even further. So once you have names of people and you know what, you know, you do a little digging research on who these people were when they lived there and what their practices were, you can get a better idea of how to approach them.
Absolutely. That's great information.
Yeah, it definitely helped us in that investigation that I told you about, which is why he probably was a little frustrated with us letting the clients and the property know who he was, and you know, why we were there. And, you know, you have to respect, you know, the people on the property. We found two brothers that actually lived on the property who were teachers, and the property was a school. And the reason how we were able to find this is we got the original deed from the original clients, and we found our way going all the way back to the 1700s as far as when the property was founded.
Gracious.
And Yeah, we gave all this information. This is, like I said, not we just do the printing, and the only time we would ever not pay for some of these services is if the client specifically said, I don't need the history, I've done enough historical research. But normally, as a default, we will do the history of the place and give them the deed records.
Cool. Well, I'm going to interrupt you.
Sure.
Because it's time. We are up at our top of the hour news break. So I'm sorry, I was so into that I wasn't even looking. So we are going to take this break and we will be back afterwards. And you know what? You never know. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of good news here. That's always a hope. So let's push for it.
Detaining families indefinitely. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. The Trump administration proposing a new rule that would license federal facilities that would house families crossing the border illegally.
Acting DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan.
The new rule establishes a high national standard for care of children and families in custody.
Under what is known as the Flores rule, children can currently only be detained for 20 days. After that, they must either be separated from other family members or the whole family released into the United States. This new rule would allow families to stay together in custody while their cases are adjudicated. While the president's critics say separating families is unconscionable, they also complain that detaining children for long periods of time is harmful.
Fox's John Roberts at the White House. 7 environmental and animal protection groups joining forces to file the first lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's rollback of the Endangered Species Act. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office out with its projection for the federal deficit for next year.
Deficits will exceed $1 trillion next year and average more than $1 trillion annually through the decade. The Congressional Budget Office updated its deficit forecast after legislation suspending the nation's debt limit and ending scheduled budget cuts for defense and non-defense agencies. The same projection also points to trade barriers reducing U.S. output next year because of tariffs put in place by the Trump administration. That would mean a reduction in average real household income by $580.
Fox's Jared Halpern in Washington. The number of breathing illnesses reported among people who vape now at 150 in 16 states. The FDA joining the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and states investigating reports from the last 2 months. All the illnesses reported in teens or adults who use an e-cigarette or another type of vaping device. America's listening to Fox News.
The following message is brought to you by TD Ameritrade. So you've done a ton of research on a trade, but you can't decide if you want to go through with it. TD Ameritrade's trade desk might be the secret to figuring it all out. Just go to tdameritrade.com/trade desk to see how they can help gut check your trades. Member SIPC.
Day 5 in the search for 2 firefighters who disappeared while on a fishing trip in Florida.
The Coast Guard, Navy, Customs and Border Protection, boats, ships, and planes, as well as dozens of volunteers on their boats, once again today scouring the water in grid patterns. That search zone now covers Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Firefighters Justin Walker and Brian McClooney departed Friday morning from Cape Canaveral for a day out fishing on their 24-foot boat. The only clue found so far, McClooney's tackle bag floating 50 miles offshore. The Coast Guard says it will continue searching into tonight and assess the likelihood of finding the men at that point. In Miami, Phil Keating, Fox News.
The FBI and U.S. attorneys in Washington and Nashville say they've arrested a man for making online threats to commit a shooting at a Planned Parenthood facility in Washington. 20-year-old Jacob Cooper charged with unlawfully transmitting a threat to injure. Prosecutors say the postings also included threats about killing federal agents with a bomb, a rifle, or the poison ricin. An old football league gets a reboot.
8 new professional sports teams were named today, with just under 6 months until the XFL kicks off its season. A relaunch for a league that lasted only 1 season in 2001. Today, the XFL revealed nicknames and logos for its 8 teams. The New York Guardians, Los Angeles Wildcats, Dallas Renegades, Houston Roughnecks, the St. Louis Battlehawks, Seattle Dragons, Tampa Bay Vipers, D.C. Defenders. The XFL season kicks off on Fox February 8th, 6 days after Super Bowl 54. Jared Max, Fox News.
The contestants for the new season of Dancing with the Stars are out. They include Christy Brinkley, Hannah Brown of The Bachelorette, and former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. The new season kicks off September 16th. I'm Lisa Lacera, and this is Fox News.
The following message is brought to you by TD Ameritrade. When it comes to investing, each of us does it our own unique way. Some of us want to go it alone. Others might prefer some guidance. Regardless of your style, TD Ameritrade is always creating new solutions to help you. From their award-winning technology to personalized guidance, they have everything you need to invest on your terms. Visit tdameritrade.com/YTDA to learn more and get started today. Member SIPC.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Hello there. Welcome back for the second hour of Paranormal Experience Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. If you missed the first hour, what were you thinking? No, just kidding. If you had something come up and you had to miss part of that segment, I'm going to let you know that all is not lost. You can find all of our archives on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, YouTube, Spotify. Oh my gosh, everything. We're everywhere. You can find us on podcast. It is just really amazing, to be quite frank, where we go with all of this stuff. I love it. I love it. So we are enjoying the show tonight with Jordon Jones. Jordon is the co-founder. He is a case manager, and he is also the lead researcher for the Oculus Paranormal Team. He is someone that I met last year, actually, at my first Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. We ran into each other again this year, liked each other just as much. I am so impressed with the professionalism that he brings to his investigations, and I'm excited that he is here. So, Jordon, welcome back.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate the kind words.
Well, they're just honest.
Shucks.
Shucks. Oh, my goodness. You're sounding Southern. But, you know, I found what you did as your job in Washington and Virginia very fascinating. And I think that being an analyst really did set you up very well for the work that you do with the paranormal, because you were already trained as an investigator. And when you became an actual paranormal investigator, you were with people who had a good background, so you had good leadership. Then now you are kind of the active person with that. So do you feel like you've come as far as you really have? You've accomplished so much in a fairly short time period, 2 years, and you keep learning.
That's the thing, though. When you feel like you've reached the limit of learning, then you might as well be dead, is the way I look at it. I am constantly learning new techniques, investigative and spiritual, from other people in this field, and I prize them. That's why I love coming to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash and other meetups, because I have talked theory and I have discussed things with other people about experiences in this field, and I think if we hold such a rigid outlook on how things operate or how things work, then we won't be able to uncover new information. And I think that's always keeping an open ear to some of the, not only the older paranormal investigators, the experienced, but also sometimes you need fresh eyes on things. And that's why when I bring new team members, I recruit new team members onto the team, which I actually rarely do, because this is one thing that one bit of advice that I can stand on being just pretty solid, is that you don't bring on more team members than you can handle, and always allow the energy of those new people to find balance and cooperation with the existing team members. And I don't think that people that bring on 5, 6, 10 new team members every few months, those people, they change like calendars, like yes. The pages on a calendar. They will leave and they will come and go. And my outlook on that with a team is that's fine too. I don't mind team members going and working with other teams, because that's, once again, my philosophy is that we're all learning a field that we're all interconnected, because the paranormal community, whether it's dealing with UFOlogy, with cryptids, with the spirits, these are all things that people have interacted with, come into contact with, and we all eventually die. As dark as that sounds, we all are going to be there at some point. So what better than to have so many different avenues of investigation styles and different techniques to learn more information. If we gather information, we should be able to share it. And I think that some of the people in the paranormal community don't want to share because they feel like they will be ridiculed, or an idea will be stolen, and that's unfortunate. I find it's a sad state of affairs. I think that people need to share and bounce ideas off of people, because that's how we're able to gather the best information for what's going to be found on the other side.
I agree. You have to be willing to do the work.
Yes.
Because there is a lot of work. If you're going to be a credible investigator and be presenting credible evidence, you have to educate yourself. You have to work together. You have to be a good team so that you trust each other.
Precisely.
And I do not investigate with large groups of people unless I'm at a public event, because I don't want to be distracted and I don't want my evidence contaminated.
Right.
So I'm very picky about who I investigate with.
Indeed, and I can attest to that, because our team has had to remove team members just for the fact that there were people that would fake evidence this was like in the very beginning of when we formed the team, is that they would try to create instances of paranormal activity when they weren't there. And that right there, as soon as we found instances of that, they were not trustworthy enough to handle any evidence whatsoever, whether it be video, audio, photos. Just if you're going to do it one time, then you're going to do it any other time, and that's not acceptable.
That has to be a one and done.
That's my one stand, is that you can have different theories and approaches to paranormal investigation, and your techniques might be different than others, but if you are if you're a faker or a forger, that's just going to set the entire team, if not the whole paranormal community, back, because the outside world, if you're trying to work with the community and help people, they see that as like, oh, well, the paranormal community is a bunch of fakers. So that's that. They see one person, they see everybody as that. So we just try to nip that in the bud real quick, because there are people like that.
Well, I don't understand why people don't realize when they leave people like that on their team, why they don't realize that they're not just damaging their own reputation, but they're also damaging the entire field, because we get enough of the ooh, woo woo kind of thing, and especially if you are someone with abilities, you have to work that much harder to document what you're saying may be there.
Exactly. The idea behind the ability to parse between someone that is like making up evidence and someone that is diligent and has control over the investigation is, you see the people that have every instance of evidence, any of these pieces of evidence happen like every 10 minutes or every 5 minutes, is that someone is saying, ooh, look at this. Oh, look at this. Oh, this is, we found something paranormal. We found a spirit. Spirit is saying something about me. When you hear someone that is broadcasting and focusing inward, that they're just focusing on themselves, or they're focusing just trying to get a rise in it seems like they're trying to get attention, those people have been more often than not the ones that are forging or faking evidence. Because I will tell you this, the reveals that I provide our clients, we have a scant few Class A EVPs.
Right. Well, they're hard to come by.
We're not presenting 20, 30, 40, 50 EVPs, like when I do public events, I show some of our publicly accessible evidence to the people that stop in. And that is maybe about 5 EVPs that we want to show, 5 pictures and maybe a couple videos of the past almost 4 years now that we've been doing investigations. And I know people that have been doing it a lot longer, and they have had a lot less pieces of evidence that they have run with. But then there are also the opposite end of the spectrum, where there are people that have been doing it for, say, a couple years, and they would watch the shows, the television shows on paranormal, and they would provide you hundreds and hundreds of different instances of evidence. And it just needs to be, you need to ask yourself whether you are doing it for your own self-fulfillment, or if you're doing it to promote the community and show this evidence to the community. If you want to go out there and run around and say that this is a spirit, this is what you believe it is, that's fine. I have no problem with you doing that. But if you're going to do it in a sense that you're saying that this is valid, justifiable proof that paranormal evidence exists, well, have people analyze it with you. Have other teams look at it and, have their techniques to decide, give constructive feedback, I guess is what I should say. People are and they do, kind of poo-poo on other people's techniques, and that happens in any field. Anyone that has a specialty in something, there's going to be people that say that I can do it better, or that's not. So it's the paranormal community is not original in that. But
that's true. But I will just put out there that last week, as you mentioned, I interviewed Tim Woolworth, who I think probably is one of the best ITC people that I know.
Yes,
I greatly respect his work. I think he's really a neat guy and very professional too.
Yes.
But you will never hear him mocking or belittling someone who is trying to learn to implement his methods.
That's
He's-
respectable.
He very much wants to help build the community. He educates, and that's what it's about. But we are up against our first break of this hour.
Okay.
So 20 minutes flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Yes, indeedy.
So we will be back right after this. Y'all come back too, because this is just fascinating to me. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the flip side.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. And we're back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Paranormal Experience Radio. I am joined by my guest, Jordon Jones, and we have been having a fantastic time. I am so interested in everything he has to say. I've been impressed with this young man. He does good work. He is very analytical. He is thoughtful, and he's a joy to talk to.
Thank you,
So,
Kat.
Jordon, welcome back.
Appreciate that. So
I interrupted you, and I apologize.
Oh, no worries. So we were just originally talking about the approach of the paranormal community, allowing people to have means of analysis and technique and the way that they investigate, should not allow any room for people defrauding or proving or providing evidence that didn't come from an actual piece of equipment, or they manipulated evidence in any way. That, to me, as I had mentioned, was grounds for removal from the team, because the whole point is we're trying to become enlightened and also informed on what phenomenon we're actually coming across. This is not something that we're some teams and some just people that are not even part of the team just want the scare. But
Yes.
I've come to the point where I want to start gathering evidence to prove not just what happens when we pass, but also the laws of the other side. And I know that's going deep down a rabbit hole, but what that is it's studying, what happens to spirits that were born in like 0 AD, like the birth of Jesus Christ. Did we lose all of those spirits? Why are spirits from those ages not interacting with us? Why do a lot of the spirits that we interact with are from the general 1600s, 1700s to the present? And that's a question. Is there any laws or rules about how much energy a spirit can maintain until they too have to cross over, or they just disappear completely from that plane? Do they not have the energy anymore to communicate with our side? And those are just things that I would love to find out with the techniques that we use.
Can I offer an idea on that?
Sure.
As a rule, just saying in the U.S., we don't have access to those areas to investigate where they may be. I do know that there are teams over there who do that, but based on religious preferences and practices, it's not necessarily the best area to say, I'm going to research this. Because some religions and faiths are much more serious about their consequences than others. So even if you had someone in Egypt, if you had someone around the pyramids and just the areas there, then going into, Israel and different places where he walked and his friends walked, then that would not be a safe area to do an investigation if someone knew what you were doing. If you were, in Europe, then there are ancient spirits there. Especially I know there are quite a few in the Scottish nation. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there are. I think that you have what is local to you where you're investigating.
I see.
Yeah, because we have Native American spirits here who are ancient of days. So, they were here too. It's just amazing to me because, you had the heart of humanity where we were put based on, my belief system. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of broadened out from there because I don't think everybody just showed up covering the globe.
Right.
At one time, they had to migrate. So it's interesting. But we have a question for you. We have 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Are you up for them?
Oh, shoot. Go for it.
All right. Well, Brenda had asked, what was the scariest episode that you had ever experienced? Was it the one that you relayed? Or is there something more?
Well, the scariest episode that I had experienced, I can actually provide 2 because they're both back to back. One was seeing one of my co-founders receive an attachment, which means is that he was walking around Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. This is when we actually first met. And he was investigating the area, and there was this dilapidated house at the top of Harper's Ferry, and a couple of the team members had split off and gone up to this house. And they were doing the infamous spirit box up there, and almost like the digital Ouija. And what had transpired is they were communicating with a family, a mother, father, and a daughter, from what they could tell. And the moon was out full, there was no clouds in the sky. All of a sudden, what was described by several of the team members, including my teammate that had gotten attacked, had the whole house had gone black as pitch. And the moon was still out, and there was nothing that could have caused that darkness. So Stacy, one of the co-founders and sensitive, had said, we have to move. Something changed. Energy had changed in this spot. So they started moving towards the doorway. And as I mentioned, this is just like a rundown, dilapidated house. No one lived there. Tyler, who was the person that was part of our team, also the co-founder,
Right.
had gotten a strong poke to his shoulder, almost like someone prodded him. And he was a little taken aback by that, but he said, okay. He's like told it to stop, and he just kept walking. He started walking down the road back towards the park where we were waiting with the rest of the team. And he started getting pushed and prodded the entire way, almost like someone was just messing with him. He took a picture with his cell phone camera, and was just taking pictures around the area. He said he felt something was just kind of bearing down on him. He showed me later that these pictures had two very visible human faces with eye sockets, nose, mouth floating off in the sky above him. So he had shown me these pictures afterwards. Now, to cut to where he eventually got down to us, his entire throat and neck was a red, like a dark red band. Almost like someone had pulled a noose around him or someone was choking him. He couldn't breathe, almost like he was breathing through a straw. And we had to carry him over to the park bench where we were all waiting. And he was not able to breathe. To the best of his abilities, he was suffocating slowly. We took a picture of this, and we were looking at his neck, and it was as dark. It was probably the darkest red. You could see probably maroon color.
My word.
He eventually, our whole team laid hands on him, started reading scripture, saying the Lord's name and prayer. And about 30 minutes later, took 30 minutes, a half an hour of us doing this. And all of a sudden, this ring started removing. It started to clear up. And he was able to talk normally, breathe, and almost like he didn't know what had happened. Scared the living heck out of him, and to understand that his neck was like a red as a beet, and then went back to his normal skin color after we did what we did. And I asked Tyler afterwards, do you have any allergies? You know, me being Mr. Skeptic. Do you have any?
No, not you.
Do you have any allergies? Is there something you could have inhaled up at that cabin? He's like, no, I was breathing fine when I was walking through that cabin. And I know asbestos takes years, months upon years for it to actually affect people's breathing, as give them lung cancer and things of that nature.
Right.
So it doesn't take effect that quickly. So my friend was ultimately, I believe that there was an attachment to him during leaving that house, and he was in a bad state until we were able to lay hands on him and pray for him and give him holy water. And like I said, 30 minutes later after that ring started removing. It's actually, the pictures are on our website. So that was probably the one of the scariest moments, because that's what actually brought me into the paranormal as well, was being scared into it.
Most people would have run, Jordan, just saying.
Well, I want understanding to, if this is going to happen again, or if it can happen again. I want to make sure that I'm prepared for it.
Well, it can. I had a client who had that experience.
Oh,
and
geez.
When I saw the pictures, I was like, oh, come on. Well, yeah, they were real. The pictures were valid. So it was a very interesting thing. I don't know what I would have done if that were the first time I was investigating. That's just really a little unique and unusual. We have another question.
Sure.
And I'm going to revisit that subject in just a minute, but I want to get this in. Denise would like to know, what is the most haunted spot in Dundalk or the Essex Middle River area, in your opinion?
Well, the Dundalk and Essex area is a relatively new area for me, so I can't speak with a lot of authority on that. But I can say that the closest haunted location that we had visited was the Fort McHenry area, and that's actually open to the public, but it is not yet, I should say yet, because we haven't bridged that gap yet, but we want to do an investigation there at some point soon, but we just need to collect the funds to do so. This Fort McHenry was, of course, the War of 1812, the great battle between the U.S. and British, and they had converged. The British had actually brought troops up into Baltimore City and had staged a battle in Patterson Park, which actually was one of the locations that I lived in Baltimore City. And it was amazing seeing that this very beautiful open park had so much just tragedy and turmoil. There was a lot of dead bodies that they had to clear from the park, as well as Fort McHenry. They have had spirits. There's jail cells, and the grounds have heard clanging and yelling, and just things. It was a lot of emotion. Emotions ran really high because the fort was getting bombed to smithereens by British ships, and the Fort McHenry was trying to fight back, and there was just it was these high energy, these high emotional locations definitely bring about, if not a residual, which you've got a video carbon copy, a repeat of the events, but there are some spirits that are wandering around, looking for what once was. They're trying to find their squad, or they're trying to find their way home, and there have been reports of spirits wandering those grounds.
When you get into the residuals with the stone tape theory, it's just amazing how accurate those reenactments are.
Oh yes, I actually, that's a new study that I actually came across, is that the stone tape theory, that things like we had an actual incident with stones such as that in the old Hager House. Hager House is Jonathan Hager House of Hagerstown, Maryland, which is a very, very active location because that was the second place that's almost I scared the living crap out of me, in so many words. I was down in the basement in the Hager house, and that was the first. It was the first full-bodied apparition that I had seen, and that to see that, I'm a big skeptic, and to see someone that was not part of the Hager House historical team, that they're reenactors, of course,
right?
To see someone with a big black cloak and a top hat go to the other side of the basement. There was a little walk-through, the little opening in the basement that we saw this figure. Me and Tyler both looked up and saw this figure at the same time walk through the other side of the basement, and the only thing we had behind us was the stairway to go upstairs, and we were standing next to the stairs, so we would have heard someone come down past us.
Well, of course, yeah.
And we saw this figure just hold his top hat. He was wearing like an early 1800s, late 1700s period piece, just a long cloak, just very old slacks, and just proceed to just walk on his way. And we looked at each other. We're like,
I bet you did.
Yeah, we were like, what in bloody hell is that? And we look back towards that entrance, and we follow past after him. And we get into the other room where there's a lot of water. There's an actual underground stream that runs through the basement of the Hager house. So there was also the stones, which, of course, the stones could have kept the memory of him walking through that part, because it seems like he didn't recognize us at all or see us. He just kept on going on his way.
He was just living life, as it were.
Excuse me. Yeah, and he the only way he could have left was either jumped in the water and hid there. If he was a reenactor and he was playing a real sick joke, he would have jumped in the water, which there's no ways to hide in the water because the stream, you can't get through the gates. There's a little grate that goes to the outside portion. And then there's a doorway with a piece of wood wedged in between these. So you can't get through that area quickly. So we looked for him, and we didn't know where he went. So we just saw an apparition, just what I believe to be a residual, just duck under. He's a tall man, ducked right under that little thoroughfare and walked to the other side of the basement and just never showed up.
Oh my word! And that being said, we've got to take this last break. And everyone, this is going to be our final break. We're going to come back for our last segment with Jordan. If you have more questions, please go ahead and get them in. We'll share them with them. We'll be right back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
In today's breaking news, over 1.8 million people have signed a petition that is circulating throughout social media and online, pledging to raid Area 51 in hopes of freeing any extraterrestrials that could be on site. Also seeking full disclosure from the U.S. government. Could anything actually come of this? What could be the outcome? Find out on our continuing coverage at 9 p.m. here on WBHM-DB Action News.
You're kidding, right? Most of those people could have raided a refrigerator if it weren't for it having a light in there. How about this? For some real information that you can use, instead of the other sources, stay here where you are on WBHM-DB, Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experience Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm so glad you're here because this has been a great show. I've learned so much about Jordon. I am so glad that he's been here to share his experiences. And Jordon Jones, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
What would you like to share now? This is your time. Why don't you go ahead and let people know how they can get in touch with you?
Oh, sure. So we are based out of Hagerstown area, but we travel pretty great lengths when we have a prior notice. So anyone that needs any assistance with just understanding what their property's history is, what presence resides on their property, or if they need a cleansing, we have a full team that can assist in this aspect. We're based out of Hagerstown, but we've traveled as far as Southern Virginia. We've gone as far as Western West Virginia, and we've gone pretty far north into Pennsylvania and New York and New Jersey. So we cover some pretty large swath of area. But like I said, just reach out to us and let us know. We have our Facebook page. We also are through Oculus Paranormal Team at gmail.com. So that's oculus.paranormal.team@gmail.com. Or you can reach us by our main line at 301-960-5165, and that is our main line that connects to a few of our members. It's our main office line. So you can leave a message, and we'll definitely get back to you within a 24-hour period. So besides just the offer to assist on an investigation, I also want to impart something that we had talked about at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. Part of the aspect of a paranormal team, there is the physical as well as the spiritual and the mental. I believe that when we conduct investigations, we have to be aware of all three because they're all interconnected. The idea that when you are doing a desk job at work and you're, tinkering away and you're writing reports, and you know that your mind, when that gets tired, your body feels tired as well. When you get home, you don't feel like you ran a marathon, but you did work all day. So the mind does affect the body. Well, the spirit also affects the mind and body in the same way. And the aspect that people approach things separately when they see an attachment or a demonic possession, or they see people that their health is failing. I believe that all three aspects of the human condition need to be looked at for both client and investigator. And so we did touch on this in our discussion that you need to be aware of your members in your team. You need to understand changes in energy when new members join the group. If there's a conflict between team members, and this is advice because I've experienced it. This is not something that I've been trained or taught. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but you do need to be aware of the aspects of your team, both mental and physical and spiritual. Internal conflicts, approach team members separately. You don't necessarily have to approach them in a group, because no one wants to be approached if they have issues in a group setting, because that might embarrass them.
Well, and it makes them feel bullied sometimes. It can cause negative emotion that doesn't necessarily have to be there, because they already know they have a problem usually, right?
Exactly. So that's why, as a team leader, I try to designate a person, a trustworthy long-term member of the team, for if a team member has issues, that there is someone to actually go to talk with them. Because the idea is that you should have a couple, like maybe 2 team members that are there to listen individually, to mediate and listen. Because there's been times where every team that's been out there has had conflicts between team members, and they don't know who to ask to step back, or they don't know who to mediate or stand in their corner. It's very difficult to have to choose. But when you approach each team member separately and then allow them to communicate with each other after you've mediated for them, then that's the best route that I've seen conflicts get solved within teams, and that keeps teams together a lot longer than not. I also have seen people that have hold full-time jobs, me included. I work 40 hours a week. Try to avoid overworking. It's avoiding burnout from investigations and events. You delegate to your teammates. Some people do like to just take on the full brunt of the investigation review and evidence. That is going to cause you to burn out, where you're not going to be able to go on any future investigations for a long time. And I've seen this happen to people, where you put your all into one big investigation, but then you can't do any more because you've got 0 hours of sleep for like an entire few days or a week. And that cannot be healthy for anyone, much less the team leader. We also have to assign members who can check on other members before an investigation. What we like to do is called a mental wellness check.
That's a powerful thing.
Yes. You cannot necessarily, you can't tell what members are like unless you ask them. You don't have to ask them their full medical list of prescriptions. It's not something that, this is something that we, as a team, it should not be the responsibility of the team itself, but an individual or a team leader should keep a list of known either medications that might be life-saving or conditions that we all need to know about. I mean, I'm as young as I am, I'm a type 1 diabetic. And if people didn't know that I had low blood sugars or high blood sugars during investigations, that could have spelled not only discomfort for the client that we'd be helping, but also it could cause a serious situation where I would not have access to the means to treat myself if I was out in an investigation area that's not in a city or a populated area.
Yes.
And that's something that there needs to be, I think, an assigned member on a team that understands, what the risks, what are people dealing with both mentally and physically before they go on an investigation. It's just a testing the water to see, hey, how are you feeling? Like you ask your team member, are you ready for this investigation? Have you been dealing with anything heavy recently that you want to talk about? It's just because when you walk into any investigation location, you're bringing that type of energy with you. It's almost like going to work. You leave your leave your crap at the door. Well, some people can't do that unless you talk about it with them, because unfortunately, people try to swallow their emotions and their mental issues and some spiritual issues, and some of the team members won't even know that some of the team members are experiencing it, and it could cause some trouble and a potential attachment to the other team members as well. It bleeds into the rest of the team.
That's what I was going to say, because while the team members around that person may not be aware, when you walk into an environment that has an intelligent spirit, an intelligent entity, they know everything about you.
Exactly.
And it's really eerie. People don't believe that until they experience it. But they know your vulnerabilities, they know your fears, and they know how to manipulate you.
And they can play off of that. And the last thing is just have a healthy skepticism when going on an investigation. This was something that I talked with Kat a little bit on break, but there's a term that I learned that is called a debunker. And a debunker is someone that has a preset belief system. And it's not just religion. It's also scientific. Some people have ideas imposed on them by someone else, or ideas that ground them in a certain way that is not open to other possibilities during an investigation. This is the one thing that I learned as an analyst, is that once you pigeonhole yourself into a very rigid set of ideas, then you're not open to other possibilities that might come through. And that I think if having a healthy skepticism is ask questions and you'll get your answer. You might get more questions, but you'll get a clearer idea of what you're dealing with, as opposed to just saying, well, that can't be. My faith tells me this, and it's that can't be, because I'm already grounded in this way. Same thing with the scientific route. You could study something to the end of your days, but science, believe it or not, is changing constantly, because new theories come to play. Theories are tested over and over and over again. And the only reason why they're theories is because they have been tested over and over again. But sometimes something new that no one has experienced, which happens a lot in the paranormal community.
It really does. People are always surprised, but there's new experiences happening all the time. There's different anomalies. I've seen things that I would never have expected, that I'd never seen before.
Exactly. And so that line of thinking is just keep a very general guideline of what things to look out for. Like I say, look at milligauss, electromagnetism. Like, people use that quite a bit as far as the paranormal toolkit. Okay, we believe that the hot and cold theory of spirits coming through, a lot of people believe that. But if there's something that keeps on popping up, don't push it down into this black hole of like, I don't want to deal with it because it goes against my belief system. If something new comes up and it consistently comes up on investigations, study it. Try to understand this new variable that comes into play in investigations, and I think you'll be surprised and you'll have a new pathway to find out answers to the paranormal this way.
Brilliant. Well, we're about out of time, Jordan. I have had so much fun with you here, and I've enjoyed our conversation. I always enjoy our conversations.
Oh, likewise.
But I appreciate you. I appreciate the 2
you.
hours. I know that's a big chunk of your time on a work night, and thank you.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
And that being said, guys, we are just about to be done. I have got to let you know that come Friday, it's going to be so interesting. You have Paraversal Universe, And we're going to have Shelley Burke Robertson's Ghost Talk Radio rebroadcast of her fantastic show last week with Kristen. And then I will be back Sunday for Fate Mag Radio, followed by Denise Pridemore on the Paranormal Pride. And then you are going to come back and join me again. Same cat time, same cat channel for Paranormal Experience Radio. So thank you so much. We sure do appreciate your support. I know y'all enjoyed Jordan, and we will see you next time. Y'all have a great night. Good night.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of. A bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.